Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast. Today we are speaking with Bri and Jordan, co-founders of Somerled, one of the fastest growing short-term rental design and optimization firms in the US. Since 2022, they've designed over 1,000 rentals, launching 60 plus new projects each month, helping hosts and investors elevate guest satisfaction and profitability through smarter, data-driven design. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like and share on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll get straight into the episode now. Okay, hello, Bri and Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. Cool. So to get started, maybe we can get a bit of an introduction on Somerled and give us maybe the elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, why you're here talking to the hospitable audience today.
Yeah, so Somerled, we are a short-term rental specific design company. And we came about pretty organically. So I've been investing in short-term rentals for just over 5 years now. My husband and I were in the long-term rental space, and then we sold a couple and got into short-term rentals after learning more about it. I come from a marketing background, so it was actually really exciting for me to get into short-term rentals. That was one reason why we made the jump from long-term to short-term. Was this is an opportunity to create little mini businesses to market short-term rentals. And so when I was investing early on, that's exactly what I did. I came in from that marketer's mindset and created a strategy around, okay, who is traveling to the area? What is my competition doing? How can I, take notes from my competition, but then also exceed my competition? And I had all of that kind of written out, but the design was really stumping me. I'm actually not a designer, and Jordan is. Jordan's been a good friend. We've been friends since college, and she went, into interior design. And so I asked her if she would help me on some of my rental properties, and she said yes, even though she had a full-time job and was super busy. But we had a lot of fun setting up a few of my initial properties. And from there, some people caught on to it. I was a part of some mentorship programs, and they asked like, who's designing your properties, and can we get their contact? And I'm like, oh, like I am with my friend. And organically we started offering our services to some of those people that were asking. Then 3 years ago, we actually just hit our 3-year birthday, we decided to go all in on this concept of strategic design for short-term rentals, where everything is focused on ROI. It's all marketing. It's not, what personally do we like or the investor likes. It's all about, the guest experience and how can we capture the most revenue and, the most bookings and position our clients, to charge a premium rate. So that's really like where it was all born. From there, we've grown it into, a large company now that we design nationwide in the US. And we've designed over 1,000 properties. Like the count, I kind of lose track of now. It's over 1,000 now at this point, over the past 3 years.
That's cool. And congrats on 3 years, by the way.
Thank you.
Amazing. Sweet. So you kind of talked there about strategic design and I guess maximizing revenue. What are some of the things that you look at? I guess from maybe like a data point perspective, and kind of thinking about what are the things that drive revenue from a design perspective, and what are some of the key things that you're looking at there?
Yeah, it's really cool because our strategy from the very beginning of when Bri and I first joined forces, it is the same strategy that we jump into today with all of our different clients. And so the very first thing that we look at is, okay, where are you investing? So clients come to us when they already have a property, they've already done their market research, and they have seen something that has drawn them to that specific property or to that market. And so we will then just jump in and say, okay, what is your competition doing? What is the reason why people are coming to this area? And then how can we really capitalize on that with design? And so there are a few different things that we jump into on the strategy side to make sure that our design is actually, formulated in a way that is going to, boost that revenue. And so the conversations from the very beginning are very data focused. We are looking at numbers. We are looking at, okay, what is going to be your payback period? What is going to be the ROI on an actually, on a strategic design service like us. But that is all kind of like that very first conversation. And we don't even touch design until all of that is solidified. And so again, once we actually get past that point of, okay, it is going to make sense for your investment to hire interior design partner. Then we will jump into, okay, the guest count, the strategy with amenities, and then we then get into the actual design strategy. So there are a lot of kind of levers that we will pull, but design is actually kind of like the last thing that we will jump into, because at the end of the day, we are designing for that return. And who is going to give you that return? It is the target audience, the people who are actually going to be booking your property. So it's a very it's a very cool kind of strategy and formula that we came up with very early on, and it is still the same thing that we hold true to today.
Nice, that makes sense. And obviously, yeah, it sounds like a lot of strategy and planning goes into it before you touch design. Do you see any hosts that have kind of maybe attempted to go down the design route themselves before coming to you and kind of made mistakes along that journey? I would love to understand some of the more costly mistakes you've seen, or they've put a lot of money into design but it's not worked out. Are there any common mistakes that you tend to see there?
Yeah. And for us, like, it's all about the return. So the strategy comes first, because you need to look at it from a numbers standpoint and have a plan before then you're doing execution. So I think a costly mistake is throwing amenities around without having a clear vision. Amenities are very expensive and they're a huge revenue driver. So like, people get that right, but what you need to do on the amenity side is match the competition. Like, why are people traveling here? What is the competition doing? And make sure you include those amenities. Now, we also go a step above that. And, say you're in a cabin market, everybody has a hot tub. Great. Like, that's a non-negotiable. But take that a step further. If hot tubs are a huge reason that people, book, and like they sometimes like a non-negotiable, like they're only going to book something with a hot tub, take it a step above and create a hot tub experience that's not like anybody else's. Like, put it on an amazing deck with a view and put string lights around it and create this ambiance. And then when you go to photograph it, show the experience that people can have. Don't just take a picture of a hot tub with the cover on. Like, have it off and steamy and lights, and get the post editing done on the photos to create a great, sunset into it. So I'd say one kind of miss that people have when they're designing on their own is just this guesswork, kind of like throwing shots in the dark. You need to go in with a strategy. So hit those amenities, then think of like, what are the unique amenities that you can bring in that then set your property apart, which enables you to charge a premium rate because you're offering an experience that nobody else has in your market. And the way that we can come and draw some conclusions there, because that can be risky to say we're going to introduce a brand new amenity or something that not a lot of people have. That's expensive, but we can justify it by looking at the target audience. What are they going to be doing when they're there in the market? What are their reasons for traveling there? And meet them where they're at with their expectations. We can also look to more competitive markets that are very similar. So say you're in like a kind of smaller cabin market region. Well, look to the Smokies. Like, the Smokies is like a huge saturated market where you have like every single amenity possible. What's working there in that market that's very similar to your small cabin market that you can bring in, because you can learn from data that's working over there, and it's a very similar reason for travel. So yeah, that's one thing. I think people throw a lot of money around with amenities, but you need to be smart with it. And then on the design side, like the furnishing side, you need to strategize what are your priority photos. Like, your photo order should be like you're showing all your cards up front. Like, what are the heavy hitters that people, earn their click, get them excited to look more into your listing. And that's the same concept. Like, that's where you should be putting your money into. So it's going to be those amenity spaces, those gathering spaces. What doesn't matter as much are like the fifth bedroom, like some of the bedrooms when you're deeper into the listing, even bathrooms. A lot of people renovate and create these beautiful bathrooms, and that's awesome. I mean, if you have the goal of, investing into the property to raise the value of the home, great. That's great. But if you're looking purely at a cash flow standpoint, renovations don't always make sense because you're putting so much money into it, and that's not a priority for people when they're booking. They're going there for like vacation reasons, not to like live in this home for months and enjoy a bathroom or a kitchen. So that's kind of high level, what I would say as far as people putting money into spots that aren't worth it.
Yeah. And then obviously kind of putting money into the property, how do you balance kind of the aesthetic and the photography element, I guess, versus like the durability of some of these things that you're putting in? Like, how do you find the materials and the furniture and things that are actually going to last, but give that great look as well? Like, how do you find that balance to make sure that you can get stuff that's going to last over time, over hundreds and thousands of guests?
Yeah, so we always come back to knowing that our clientele, they're investors. So we're not going to just
Hmm.
suggest to spend money to spend money. We need to make sure that their money does have a return and that it makes sense. And so we are really good at looking at a space and knowing, okay, where do we want to spend and then where do we want to save? And so usually in a property, we want to spend on things that have, a high touch point. Where are your guests going to be spending the most time? It's usually like in living spaces. We want to make sure that we're going to probably invest in like a really great sofa or a sectional. But where we're going to save is probably in like a secondary bedroom and maybe not spend money on like the highest end nightstands, because that's just going to be something that serves a function to hold a lamp on it, but it's not going to be something that is going to add to the overall experience. And so we also want to make sure that even like with like the amenities, where we're spending money where it is going to make sense. And so it is kind of like a fine balancing act of, okay, what is going to photograph well, but it also what is going to add to a better guest experience. It has to be both. It would be the worst if guests showed up to a property and the photos look amazing, but the experience kind of is lackluster, or the pieces are falling apart or something like that. We want to make sure that we're investing in things that make sense for the overall guest experience, but are not going to break the bank. So that's where I think it's really crucial to involve like a STR interior designer, because we have now done so many, over 1,000 properties, and we kind of know, okay, where do we save, where do we want to invest in, and we now have longevity to look at the properties that we have designed and know, okay, this is what we want to do and not. I mean, we are constantly even evolving ourselves. Like even just today, we got feedback from a client of, hey, this particular chair, it wore out a little bit too quickly. I'm like, okay, that's really good for us to know. We're not going to source that chair anymore and make sure that we are going to do something that is a little bit more durable. And so that I think is like a huge benefit of working with someone who has done it so many times is we see, okay, these are the products that are gonna, hit all the marks for you as an investor.
Nice, that makes a lot of sense. And then I'd love to kind of talk about, once you've done a refresh and you're doing the photo shoot, what are some of the kind of the key things that you always suggest when it comes to the photo shoot? Like, what are some of the shots that we can't be missing? I don't know if do any of the photography yourselves, or I'm sure that you work closely with some photographers. So what are some of the things that you're looking out for in that photo shoot of the property once you've done kind of a design overhaul?
Yeah. No, I love this question because photography, it's like the last thing that you do before you get your listing up. And sometimes
Hmm.
like you're so burnt out, it gets missed. And it's a huge miss if you don't get it right. So we actually do have a photography strategy in-house, and then we offer it to clients. So if you're working with us on the full white glove setup and everything, so like the design, the project management, everything, we're going to be managing the photo shoot, including hiring the photographer. We're there on site to direct the photo shoot. Before the photo shoot, we're coming up with the shot list, and exactly that, we're outlining what are the top photos. If we have a virtual design service, if our clients want to do the project management on their own, and that you can add on photography where we'll do the strategy for you. But what we look at for the top photos are, what are the selling points of the home that's going to capture attention quickly? The booking sites, people are scrolling, so it's a marketing game of how to grab that attention. Usually it's going to be an outdoor shot if you have that space, like, in a warm location. People are traveling there for the weather, and so they want to enjoy it and be outside. And if you have a pool and a putting green and all that, it's going to be a great drone shot. And before we need to strategize and get examples of that, we need to get on the same page with the photographer. One, you need to hire the right photographer. So some checklist things that we have is they need to be able to, capture drone shots, because we'll need that unless you're an apartment. I mean, everything, it's relative to the property, but
Hmm.
drone shots, they need to have great post editing so that they can enhance those skies. They can add fire to the fire pits. We want it just to all the enhancements that you can, so that when you're looking at the photos, it feels like this bright and vibrant house. So those are like the amenity spaces are going to be key. Another thing that we've introduced, and now a lot of people are also doing it, is the lifestyle photography. I love, the concept of lifestyle because it's showing the guest the experience that they could have, and it's also drawing their eye into the use case of the property. So if you have, an epic game room, you can look at a picture of it, but it looks a little bit stale without the people in it. So adding in the people to show the use case of it, it creates more of this emotional connection from the potential booker to looking at the property. And they're more likely to convert if they can have that emotional connection and imagine their group at the property. So we prioritize lifestyle, prioritize amenity spaces, prioritize epic drone shots. That usually covers like the first 10 photos. Then from there, you're kind of just showing the listing that proves this is a great house, and the guest, will flip through it, end up booking from there.
Nice, yeah. And then as we kind of head into the holiday season, we're recording this shortly before US Thanksgiving. As we kind of look at Airbnb photos now, if you start looking on listings, you're seeing a lot more kind of maybe Christmas imagery or snow in the photos, depending on where you are in the world. We'd love to understand if you kind of typically suggest any kind of decor tweaks or kind of branding or maybe amenity presentation tweaks as you get into kind of the higher return holiday season at all.
Yeah, it's based on the seasonality, and that's something that we'll do in our market research because we need to know when those peak seasons are. There's markets where people can come for the lake and then come for the snow in the winter. And so you need to balance that and not go too much into lake or too much into snow, have that balance. But yeah, I would recommend starting to market your property. If that's going to be a high season, you need to maximize that. Like, we're designing for high seasons. And then we add in some amenities and things that still support occupancy during the low season, but we want to capture as much as we can during the high season. That's where most of your revenue comes from. So for example, on my properties, we'll do that. We'll, have the summer photos and then the winter photos. Now sometimes you can't control when you set it up. Like, I'm putting some properties up and they're getting set up in January and it's dead. These markets don't have snow, but they're dead and ugly. And, we'll work with the photos until summertime. They're summer markets. So we'll get more epic photos in the summertime. But those properties that do have like the winter and the summer, we like to cycle them out. So that you're just selling to the experience again. People don't want to have a cozy cabin experience and then they're looking and it's a fun, lake summer feel. They want to feel the cozy when they're looking to book for a cozy season.
Nice, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So we'd love to kind of segue into specifically talking about kind of larger portfolios. And you obviously said, Bri, you yourself are an investor in a number of properties, and you've probably doing that across multiple markets, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, kind of, how do you approach a design for, if you have a client with multiple properties across different markets, are you trying to bring in some consistency across their listings, or are you very much, focus on that one property, that one listing, and how you make that, one place stand out? Or is there any kind of consistency between the brand?
Yeah, I'll speak to what I do on my properties. And then, Jordan, if you have anything to add for our clients, it kind of depends on their business model. There's like so many different paths you can take, even in this like niche sector of short-term rental investing. Like the path that my husband and I are on, we own over 30 properties, and it is nationwide. It's really scattered. We have some on the West Coast, some on the East Coast, some in the Midwest. But it's all umbrellaed under West Properties, which is our brand. So that's the model we have. And we're investing in larger homes. We're looking for 5+ bedroom homes. So you could say our clientele is very similar. And that is like kind of the line that we're trying to draw between these properties. But the properties themselves can vary in look, and they look very different. Like our ones that are on lakes look different than our ones that are in the mountains. And that's okay for me, because people are traveling, like when they're going to different destinations, they want to feel different things. Like I'll go to Nashville with some girlfriends, and that's a very different experience that I'm looking for than going to the mountains with my family. And so that's what's cool about travel, is like you could be targeting the exact same person, but it's a different experience, and they want to feel like those different feelings as they're traveling. So for my portfolio, like we have a direct booking website, an Instagram page. It's all under West Properties. The looks are different, but we're targeting the same clientele, like large multi-generational families. Other people may have different strategies. So it's definitely a conversation we have with our clients of, do you want to string this together? Are you going to have one Instagram page for all the properties, or are you going to try to have different Instagram pages for different properties because they're so epic and have such a unique brand that you're going to, and have two completely different audiences that you need to separate them? Kind of depends on their business strategy. But I will say, because we're backed by research and strategy and the design comes after all of that, we can go into any market and say, here's the strategy, here's the audience that we're catering to, here's the design, or the design like mood boards and the feelings of it, and we can design to anything because of that. Like, we don't have a specific style because all of it's based on market research.
Mm-hmm. It's such a good point. And one thing that I just want to add on to what Bri was saying is she has this beautiful portfolio and they have, the West Property brand as like the umbrella, but they actually come up with a very specific brand identity for all of their different properties. And so I think that sells like that experience in a way that feels very like hospitality rated. And I think like that branding personality, it still fits within your umbrella, but it still is a great standalone piece too. And so we actually do have a client. I kind of want to talk to that because it is a little bit of a different strategy where this is an investor where he has created this brand called Birdie Houses. And his strategy is going into different markets in the United States that are golf related. They know that there are going to be a ton of people traveling to that location specifically for the golf courses. And so he has invested in several different markets, and the Birdie Houses brand fits in all of those different markets. But even our design strategy, depending on where they're located, it is different. It's not just a rinse and repeat and okay, it's going to look the exact same in Myrtle Beach versus Bandon, Oregon. It is actually very different depending on, okay, what is the feeling that this location is supposed to evoke, and why are people traveling to this location, even though that is the overall arching brand. So yeah, again, there's lots of different strategies, and luckily with our design strategy and approach, it really can work in any market.
Nice, love it. So I'd love to segue into kind of a bit more about the business, I guess, and kind of your experience of growing it. Obviously, you're both co-founders of what's essentially one of the fastest growing firms in the short-term rental space at the moment, I think. We'd love to understand kind of what are some of the challenges you found that you've faced trying to grow the business in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, kind of top of mind because we're looking to 2026 right now and planning a lot of our growth strategy and goals, and then how are we going to support those goals. I think something that really early on happened, and this is a great problem to have, is that the business outgrew us. It outgrew us pretty quickly. That a lot of people were interested in this service, and so we quickly had to delegate. It was very hard in the beginning. Now it's become much more natural to delegate. But hiring those first people, it was hard, and you're scared too of, okay, now you have overhead and you have salaries to pay. But I'd say something that's helped our success is having the goal setting and kind of looking at goals as like, we're not gonna, because goals can feel overwhelming when you're like, well, all this is on me. I have to do all that work to like reach those goals. We'll say, okay, if it's not like, if it's outgrown you, your goals are too big that you couldn't do it on your own, then make the whole plan for it. Come up with, who do you need? What seats do you need? What people do you need? Who are those people? How much are you going to be paying them? The whole plan to support the growth, and then kind of reverse engineer it and say, okay, how many deals, revenue, all that to support it. So we're dealing with that in 2026. We're doing another big growth, goal and planning, and it feels overwhelming. And that's something that I've kind of had to realize, is that it doesn't all have to fall on me. The goals can feel big, and if they're supported, then let's go after it. Let's go after the big goals, and then just come up with the plan and execute from there after the plan is done.
Nice.
I think one thing I will just add is, it's not like a super like sexy topic by any means. It's just like the operations, and that is something that Bri and I have learned, very early on, that like we needed this to function without us having to tell someone else like every little thing that they need to do. So we built out really robust like SOPs and processes, and so people can work more independently without having someone telling them and holding their hand every single step of the way. So as soon as you can replicate an SOP, then that is where growth happens. And so that is something that we had to learn, and I feel like at this point we are able to do pretty successfully, and that is the whole kind of backbone of the growth that we're seeing, this past year, and then, what we're going to be looking towards in the new year.
Nice. And obviously, it sounds like you two have been friends since college, but it sounds like you also have kind of different skill sets, like one more creative side, maybe one more analytical side. How have you found kind of blending those together and making sure that you kind of have a successful business partnership?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We got so lucky. We talk about this all the time. Like, we probably jumped into business together too fast. Like, people should really think
Okay.
about it because it's marriage. But we just got really lucky. Like, we were friends before, but like our husbands connected us. So husbands were in the dorms together their freshman year. Then I got married to my husband. Jordan was dating her now husband, and that's kind of when we got connected. So like we were friends, but not like so close that I knew Jordan would be like my perfect business match. But that's what ended up happening. Like we really complement each other, and I think we just got extremely lucky in that yeah, like our brains are different, but like we kind of fill each other's like gaps, I guess you could say. But I would advise anybody to really think about it like a little marriage, like, are you going to complement each other? And we just got lucky. It's worked well. And our different skill sets have supported the business too on what the business needs from a strategy side and a design side.
Yeah, it is. It is very cool to see kind of our skill sets complement each other in such a great way. And again, I think we were quick to realize like, okay, Bri's really good at this, I'm really good at that, and like it's okay to be able to silo and then kind of grow in like our own spheres. And then also realizing of like, okay, where does my skill set end now? And then when do we need to hire? So I think that was a huge strength of ours from the very beginning, because that was our own relationship. It wasn't just a one-woman show from the very beginning. It was a partnership, and we knew how to work together pretty seamlessly.
Cool. And you've kind of talked about 2026 for Somerled and the business a little bit. What about STR design in general? Any trends that you think that we might see in 2026 that we should be looking out for? Is everyone going to have a pickleball court at their property by the end of the year? Anything else that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. And I do love this question, and I feel like every time I answer it, it changes, because the STR industry is such a fun industry to be in because it is constantly changing. And so it's just so important, if you are a host and taking your business seriously, that you are very sensitive to what the trends are looking like. And so I think what isn't ever going to go out of style is just making sure that like the strategy and the market research never goes away. I love the pickleball court trend. I think that's awesome, but I also don't think it makes sense in every single market. It also might not make sense for every single investor's strategy for investing into a specific property. And so that's just why it's so important to come back to that research and in making sure that that is going to support your design decisions. And so, yeah, I think there's a few things like that we have been seeing that we like this term, like the hobby host is not going to stick around for any longer. I think you need to be taking this seriously if you are wanting to see this as like a long-term game. Be a business owner and treat your properties like a true business.
And I think like the trends, we're constantly following guest expectations. Like they're forcing us as hosts to level up, and they're getting very like particular. I think back in the beginning of Airbnb, which wasn't too long ago, it's kind of crazy just like where it's come, but people were okay with sleeping on an air mattress. Like that's, I'm pretty sure how they got the name of like Airbnb. And it was like very low expectations to now the expectation is extremely high, which I think is great. Like it's capitalism. It's helping us like level up. So what the guests are expecting now, because I think during COVID, we're leaning more into short-term rentals, but now people are considering hotels more so than they were in the COVID era. So we're competing with hotels, we're competing with other short-term rental owners, and guests, if they're going to book on Airbnb, they're booking because of an experience that a hotel can't offer, that some of those hobby hosts, like mid-level hosts, aren't offering. So the experiences are like those feelings. They want to go somewhere and take a bunch of pictures and have an experience with their family. And the pickleball court, why it's so popular, I think, is because it's a great, easy game that like families can play, friends can play, and they all just leave like happy, like, oh, I just gotta like, have this fun time with my family. So like that's such an experiential amenity that people are craving. Like they're going on vacation. Most people when they go, they're looking to like disconnect from their day-to-day life and just feel some more. And so through design too, we're looking to evoke more feeling. Like I think the trend is going away from stale, like, boring Airbnbs to something that really helps them like step into this new experience. And it's cool because that can vary just market to market. That's why our job is so fun, that we get to like just create different little mini universes in short-term rentals.
Nice. Love it. Okay, final easy question. Where do people go to find out more about Somerled? If they want to inquire about your services, where do they find out more?
Yeah, I would say our Instagram is a really great place to kind of as like a first stop, just to see our work, our most recent work. And that is Somerled.designs with an S at the end. And from there, there's just a link in our bio where you can actually schedule a free consultation call. So like I mentioned before, our very first conversation starts with a lot of data and making sure that like your investment analysis makes sense to hire an interior designer. And so that is completely free. You get a lot of great information from our team where we do a full underwriting of your property. And then we dive into our design service. So that's our Instagram. You can also find us on our website. It's just somerleddesigns.com. And yeah, I would say that's the best place to find us. And again, it's a great portfolio piece, but also just seeing, client experiences and things like that too on those different platforms.
Cool. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Bri and Jordan, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Hospitable Hosts podcast. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And as always, also listen out to the next podcast dropping next week.